To the WanderLearn Show. I'm your host, Tapon. In this episode, I will be featuring Johnny Ward. It's going to be a series of interviews that I did in Mauritania. That's where we first met. He's a fascinating guy. He's traveled to every country in the world, but that's not all. He is trying to climb Mount Everest as we speak. So in April 2023, he's starting his climb, and by the end of May 2023, he should be ending his climb. Right now, he is just doing some practice climbs as we speak. I'm going to be giving out weekly updates on his progress up Mount Everest. And after those updates, we're going to feature some of the footage that we shot in Mauritania, some of that interviews. In this particular episode, he's going to be talking about rowing across the Atlantic Ocean with three other guys that he had never really met before. He had never been on a rowboat before, and this was his adventure. So this is a funny interview. It's a great interview of somebody who just closes his eyes and just dives. And that's kind of what he's doing on Everest. I mean, he has climbed some big mountains before, but Everest, it's another beast. Anyway, enjoy this. If you want to hear more, make sure you subscribe to the WanderLearn podcast. Just go to wanderlearn.com. That's enough. And on YouTube, you can also find me. Anyway, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. And now, Johnny Ward in Mauritania. Now, first of all, what's the longest distance you've ever rowed?
Rowed in a rowing boat.
Yeah.
5,000 kilometers, 3,000 miles.
Damn.
Yeah.
So where were you going?
So that was it's not just a case of what's the longest I've ever rowed. That's the only row I've ever done. I've never been in a rowboat before that, or after it, actually.
What the fuck were you thinking?
It was from essentially Europe to the Americas, but it was Canary Islands off the coast of Africa, and Spain to Antigua in the Caribbean.
What the fuck were you thinking?
Do you know, I just actually spoke to a few guys about this. So obviously I got to know you through this. I was doing every country in the world, and you were doing this every country in Africa thing. So anyway, I finished that, and then I always wanted to do some like crazy endurance stuff, like world breaking endurance stuff. It was always on my mind. And then when I was so obsessed with the every country in the world thing, I was just consumed by it, as you know from your Africa adventure. So I couldn't do anything else, weddings, funerals, anything. Everything was just consumed by the every country thing. So as soon as I finished my every country thing, I had the opportunity to go and run a marathon at the North Pole. So I did that, right? And I thought I was this hardcore adventurer, North Pole marathon. And then when I was there, I met these guys, and they were like, oh, North Pole marathon's easy. There's this marathon in the Sahara. You got to do 6 marathons in 6 days called the Marathon des Sables. And I was like, shit, okay, right, well, I'm going to have to go and do that instead. So anyway, I signed up for that straight away and did that soon after. And then when I was on that, my tent mate was like, oh no, the Marathon des Sables is quite easy. Last year I rowed across the Atlantic in a rowboat. And I was like, oh, fuck, okay, right, well, I'll do that then. So that's what happened.
Okay.
But I've got no history in boating, and I can't really swim, but I signed up for this Facebook group, and then that's all about ocean rowing, it's called. And it's quite a small group, actually. It's quite a niche thing. Anyway, they had a trip going that last minute, which is kind of my nature anyway, and they needed 2 last minute people to do it, and I've got no background in it. And I was honest with them and said, I don't really know anything about boats. I can't really swim, but I'm willing to do it.
Right, and you're in shape.
Yeah.
At least you can run a marathon, which is absolutely useless when you're on a boat where you can't even stand up and walk.
Yeah, I'd been training for an ultra, so I was fit.
Right.
But actually, it turned out you don't actually have to be that fit. You just have to be
stubborn.
Mental. Yeah.
Which you became mental.
Yeah, I became more mental. I'm permanently scarred from it. But anyway, yeah, I signed up for it, and then 2 months later, I was in the boat, and that was it.
So I was surprised. I mean, there's like 4 guys on this boat with you.
Me and 3 guys, yeah. And I think
four.
The easiest way to describe it, I know no one here can see this, but it's like the space that you live in. The boat is like the length of a small room, like your bathroom at home, maybe double the length of your bathroom at home. And then the actual living quarters is like you and me, shoulder by shoulder, really close to each other. And it's like living under a kitchen table for 2 months. The space is like the size of under a kitchen table.
On your website, you have these great images of that.
Yeah.
You can really see you're literally squeezed up right against your buddy who also hasn't showered for 60 days either.
Yeah, it's tough. And then obviously you do, the system is there's 4 of you, so you do 2 of you rowing, so you're out in the elements exposed to the storms and everything, and you row for 2 hours, and then the other 2 are living under the kitchen table in the little room beside you, and then at 2 hours the buzzer goes, and then you switch.
Right.
And
you're always with the same pair.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people get injured and stuff, so you have to chop and change a little bit, but generally you're with the same pair. It's pretty weird.
Were you the youngest guy on the board?
Yeah, and actually it's weird because you're on this tiny, like 10 square meters or 100 square feet or whatever for 2 months, and no electricity and no exercise apart from the rowing. You don't stand up, you don't see anyone else. And because of the system of like 2 hours rowing, 2 hours resting, 24 hours a day, all through the night you do it too, you actually don't see the other two that much. Do you know what I mean? Even though there's 4 of you in this tiny
I
boat.
wouldn't have thought about that.
Yeah. You only see them for like 2 minutes as you change shift.
And then you collapse.
And then you're like, go and just be depressed in the room. Thinking like, why am
well, you have to eat too.
This?
Don't you have to eat?
Yeah, so the 2 hours resting, the first 10 minutes you take off all your wet gear because you went smashed in the face by waves and stuff. And then you spend like 10, 15, 20 minutes tending to all your wounds because you got loads of friction burns because you're constantly rowing. So you're putting on creams and antibiotics and all that kind of stuff. And then you have to take like another 20 minutes to prepare your food because you burn 12,000 calories every day. So you have to eat even though you're not hungry. Everything tastes of salt. You're in pain, you're tired, but you have to eat.
Right. Are you sunburned too?
I am. I'm from Ireland, so I'm sunburned. Everyone else is okay. Yeah.
But you put on you bathed in sunscreen every morning, I guess.
The other guys have just got their shirts off the whole time. I can only maybe do that for like 10, 15, 20 minutes.
Is it that hot?
It's hot, yeah. But it's not so much the heat. It is hot, but it's just that there's no escape from it. It's just there the whole time, and you're just there the whole time. So there's no respite. There's no shade.
Now, you got 4 total people on this boat. And now I know this one guy, Ray Jardine is his name, and he rode solo across. And of course, many other people have done it.
Yeah.
But I was like surprised, like, why would you want to go with 4? And, like, why not just go alone or with a pair?
Well, actually, because I don't come from any boating background at all, right? So I've never been on an ocean.
Why did they want to do it?
I don't know. You know, port and starboard and all this. I don't know any of those. I don't know any of that means.
Right.
So
you needed somebody experienced to be with, obviously.
And I don't even know what way's north or south.
Right.
So I know which direction do you even point the boat.
Exactly.
And also, I kind of thought like it's scary. Like if you've been in a sailing background or a rowing background,
right, you're
the
comfortable.
ocean is kind of part of you, right? But I don't come from that, so I find the ocean scary. Right. So it's nice to have someone who knew what they were doing. Actually, now I finished it, and it was kind of a brutal experience. I thought that doing it with 4 would be easier, safer, or whatever. But now I know actually doing it solo is easier because you can escape from it kind of, even if it's in your own mind. Whereas when there's 4 of you and you're like touching each other for a whole 2 months, no escape, you can never escape it, not even for a split second.
But then you have psychological impacts. I mean, a lot of people, it's like solitary confinement, and so there's that thing that maybe you would suffer. Some people would suffer. Some people really can't handle solitude.
I think solitary confinement for that like 50, 60 days is actually easier than being stuck in a tiny space with 4 people, though. I guess that's just a personal choice. The only way you could ever get me to do it again would be to do it solo.
How about with, let's say, your wife or somebody you're really close to?
100% not. Well, my buddy I might, but my wife's certainly not.
Is your wife listening to this?
Well, you have to shit in a bucket and throw it over the side. I don't think that's...
That's not romantic?
No, it's not exactly the honeymoon she's after. Yeah.
Okay, so then... the other thing that I learned from your blog, which, by the way, you should really go check it out and see your blog. Why don't you plug your blog quickly?
It's called onestepforward.com because my name is Johnny Ward, so one step forward with the number 4.
Number 4, WARD.
Yeah.
And in it, you have a lot of photos of this transatlantic journey, and it was funny. Just to like see your physical transformation also, and then looking at your hands, completely weathered and worn out from all the rowing that you were doing. And the thing that I learned that was fascinating was that you didn't have to fucking row and you would have still gotten there.
Yeah, this is why I feel like climbing Everest or running an ultra marathon or cycling across countries doesn't get the media that rowing across Atlantic does, right? Rowing across the Atlantic. But actually it's kind of a bit of cheating because this is how little I know about the ocean, by the way, even though I spent 2 months doing this. I was going to even make up a word. There's some current thing that brings you from Europe to the Americas. And even if you didn't row, that as long as there wasn't some freak weather, it would drag you across in 4 months, maybe 5 months. So if you row, then you get there in 2 months-ish instead.
I see.
So, but having said that, the whole experience is so brutal. It's better to row and get there faster.
But I guess you could like take a lot more food, take 4 or 5 months worth of food. You're not spending any energy because you're just sitting back reading a book, and you'll get there.
Yeah, but you won't know where you'll end up. And
that's true.
And also, like, the chances, you get hit by rogue waves that flip your boat over and stuff. So I guess if you're there on the water for months, the chances of something like that happening are higher.
Describe how it was rowing at night.
When it's calm, it was okay, and they have a lot of biofluorescence, which is pretty cool. So every time you row, it lights up. So that's like the beautiful side of it, the Life of Pi movie style.
What do you mean? Describe that.
Do you know that biofluorescence where, like, if you agitate the water, there's some kind of algae that shine blue when you hit it.
Okay.
So when you're rowing, that happens, and it's kind of beautiful. But that beauty only like lasts for 5 seconds, and the rest of the time you're like, "Fuck! I wish I wasn't on this boat." But more often than not, is like, there's storms because you're in the middle of the Atlantic and your boat's small. So in the daytime, it's kind of scary seeing these huge building size waves like hit you in the face, and you can brace yourself for it. But at night, it's pitch black. So like, you're rowing and you're getting wet, and there's little waves splashing over you, and then suddenly, like, you just get whacked in the face with a huge wave, but you haven't seen it coming because it's pitch black.
What about, does some of that splash hit the occupants who are sleeping?
So they're in that, like,
does it ricochet?
They're in the under the kitchen table space, right?
Right.
And it's got an airtight lock.
Okay.
Which means inside there is like 40-50 degrees Celsius for you. That's like what, 110, 120.
Yeah.
And there's no oxygen, so every 15 minutes or so you have to like let the oxygen out, because if the water gets in there, if you get flipped upside down, if the water gets in there, the boat will sink. So it has to stay airtight. And if that stays airtight, when the boat flips, it flips back up the right way. That's the way it's designed.
Oh, okay.
But if that's open, the water gets in, and then it's compromised, and you sink. And we were completely unsupported, so we had no support boat, no helicopters or anything. We'd be dead.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So then you had to keep it close. So if it flipped and you're inside the compartment, you have to just stay in the compartment and hope that it flips back.
I hope that it flips back, but like 99 times out of 100, it will flip back, and it'll flip back quite instantly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you'll just wake up because you've just been flipped over.
Well, you're not really sleeping because it's so uncomfortable. And when it's not stormy, you leave the hatch door open so air can come in and you can be a little bit cool. When you have to lock the hatch door, it's so hot that the walls are just dripping you and your row mates sweat and everything, because it's no oxygen, so it's just condensation. It's pretty disgusting.
Now, did you have a stowaway on your boat like Greta Thunberg? she was like trying to get across the Atlantic and maybe funded this whole trip.
No, I think ours was actually carbon neutral.
Okay.
So she wouldn't be interested in that.
What's your key lessons from this whole experience?
Wow. Well, it's actually not so much a lesson that I learned from that, but it just compounds it. Is that, like, I'm doing bigger and bigger things with my life, whether it's like endurance events or whatever, right? And the whole every country thing and my business and all that. And then people are impressed by it, and I feel like the actual act of doing anything is not difficult. Sure, it's painful and there's suffering, but it's like time passes regardless, whether I'm on that boat, those 2 months of suffering, or someone's in the Maldives. The 2 months still pass, and they will pass, right? So I feel like with anything, to achieve anything big, like, the only thing you have to do is truly commit to it, but actually fucking commit to it, not a fake Instagram quote that says you commit to it, And once you've anything, like right now we're in Mauritania, and I'm trying to organize this ultra marathon through the Sahara, right? And now I feel like I've emotionally committed to organizing that, so I will now do that, right? Because I've committed to it. So then, if and when hopefully it becomes a big success and we've got hundreds of runners running through the Sahara in Mauritania, people are like, wow, it's amazing that you created this. I'm like, actual creating it is not that difficult. Organizing the cars and the doctors and the nurses, it's tough, sure, but the difficult thing was truly committing to it. And then once I've made that commitment, everything else falls in place.
Maybe for you though, because you're one of these types of people that once you commit, you follow through.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But some people are not like that. I mean, some people, they commit and then they say, fuck it, it's too much work, and then they give up. But you just have the character and the strength of character that once you commit. So for you, it's like, that once you commit, you're in.
Exactly.
And there's no way, but that's your character, I'm saying. That's your values. That's the way you are wired. And not everybody's wired the same way. I think some people, when they say they commit, I mean, fuck, look at marriage. I mean, people commit, everybody commits, and then, half of them divorce. I mean, so committing is like, for some people, it's easier to commit, and the hard thing is executing. For you, the hard thing is committing, and the easy thing is executing.
I think at the risk of getting into pedantics, I'd say no, because people who commit and quit haven't committed, have they, by definition?
I see what you mean. Okay, fine, fair enough. I understand your point. Okay, fair enough. Okay.
And we have it easy in the West.
Right.
Everyone has it easy. Free healthcare, free education. People are looking for problems. Like
Right.
we've never had more opportunities to do everything in our life. If you've got an internet connection, if you're lucky enough to be listening to this, if you speak English, if you've got a passport that allows you to go visit the countries, there's nothing stopping you. I know everyone wants to feel like a victim, but there's nothing stopping us.
I'm a victim.
we've got every opportunity to do anything we want. So
Right.
if we commit to anything, truly commit to it, though, you know.
Right.
And David Goggins is a big endurance guy, and I don't really look up to a lot of people because I feel there's not much sincerity in the celebrity world. People are full of shit and they say whatever popular thing that will gain traction is, right? But there's a guy who does all this hardcore stuff called David Goggins, and I really love him. And he created this concept, or at least vocalized this concept of a cookie jar, right? So the first few times you have to suffer to achieve something, even if it's something small like a 10-kilometer race or a marathon or whatever. You go through it and it's shit, obviously, and you're in pain and your brain is screaming to you, stop, this is useless, what are you wasting your time for, go and eat a cookie and sit on your couch. But you fight through that and then you finish it, right? Whether like your Africa trip, like my every country trip, whatever it is, something big ideally. But you start small, and then when you complete that and get through that difficult time, that's a cookie that you put in your cookie jar, right? And the next time that things get tough, you can revert back and take a bite out of that cookie. You're like, I've been here before. And then you've got that cookie in your mental cookie jar that you can lean on. Be like, no, I've been here before, I can do it. And then you finish the next one, you've got another cookie. And then before you've got 10, 20 cookies. And that's how anyone achieves anything. Like, now I feel like I've got lots of cookies from the stuff that I've done, so I can go even bigger. And when times get tough, because I still want to quit, I still have the things in my mind saying, oh, it's too big, it's too scary, there's a lot of risk, what if people get hurt, what if you lose all your money? But I've got so many cookies in the jar that I've earned that I can lean into those cookies and bite them and be like, oh no, I can do this, let's do it. So I've committed to it.
Johnny, when have you ever quit? Like, there's got to be times when you've just...
Do you know, I was climbing this mountain in Aconcagua, the highest mountain in South America, right? A few years ago. And
it's about 22,000 feet or
Yeah.
7,000 meters? No, it's not 7,000.
Yeah,
Is it
7,000.
Just
Yeah,
under?
6,980 or something.
yeah.
Yeah. So like 24,000 or whatever. And there was a weather warning, and we were in the expedition, it was like 3 weeks or something, and we were at high camp, and
which is around 6,000 feet?
Maybe 5.5, so like 16, 17,000 feet. And there was big storms coming. We could see from our weather routers that there was big storms coming, and the mountain got evacuated, right? Which is fine, okay, whatever. And it was going to be bad weather for 3-4 weeks, and everyone got evacuated off the mountain, and I'd been training and I'd spent a lot of money, and we left, and I knew of this two Russians that stayed there through those 3 weeks, and they stayed hunkered down in their little shitty base camp tent. And I was back in Thailand where I live, and I had to go back the following year, go through the whole process again. Thankfully I managed to get up the mountain, but those hardcore Russians, they stayed there and they got to the top during that season. They saw out the whole shitty weather, and that eats me alive that I didn't stay with them. So there.
Well, you're not fucking Russian.
True. True.
Those guys are built for cold.
Yeah. And hardship.
In hardship, and struggle. I mean, for God's sakes, there's a reason why they beat the Nazis in Stalingrad in the winter.
It's not such a good time to be promoting Russian values, though, is it?
Oh, right. God. Fair enough.